So while we're kind of on that topic, what kind of, if any, support do you guys have? Or what kind of support would be helpful? For example, um, parents, partners, organizational support, and nobody has to talk about anything they're not comfortable with. Government support, services, therapy, et cetera. What don't you have that would like benefit your life?
I'll jump in because I'm off of mute. Nobody ever wants to go first. It's not fun to go first. I'll say that I feel like I'm very fortunate in the fact that I have a very supportive partners that are fantastic human beings, and that is such a blessing. I was just telling a parent recently the other day when we were talking about their autistic kid that someday, you leave your parents and your partner kind of becomes your new caregiver. You're never really independent. No one is truly an island. There's always some connection we have, to depend on someone. This independence, I think, is a myth that they tell us we need to try and have independence. I hate it. It shouldn't be the goal necessarily. I think happy should be the ultimate goal for everything and everyone. Like, be happy, instead of what they tell us to do. But you know what I would love that I don't have, and we kind of hinted at this earlier, talking about like your avoidance of like the executive functioning tasks around medical things and doctors. Like, I do not go to the doctor. Even I need to go to the doctor. I was referred to like go get testing for EDS and an EKG and testing for POTS, and I was just like, yeah, no. And this has been years. I just never went. I was referred for physical therapy for the hypermobility that I was diagnosed with. And I never went to that either. It was like, I'm like, no, no doctors, no, thank you. I'm so afraid of doctors and everything related to doctors. And we're in America, the health insurance is so terrible that it's like, yes, I pay for this ridiculously useless health insurance that doesn't really cover much of anything I need covered anyway. So it's like, if even though I have health insurance, I'm going to go and it'll be out of pocket. So it's like, why go pay to get tortured? And I cannot make myself do it because there's all of these reasons why it makes me not want to go, on like just phobias of doctory things. They always want to poke me with a needle every time I go, and it's like, last time I got poked with a needle, I got sick to my stomach and passed out. So it's like, this is a phobia that I just can't get over. I'm like, so many autistic people have this like medical phobia, I think, because doctors don't listen to us and they gaslight us and they don't believe us when we say things. Like, I went to a dentist recently and I finally found a dentist that I like. And the dentist is like, you're in extreme pain, right? Like, really confused that I wasn't showing that I was in pain. I'm like, yeah, I'm in excruciating pain. I really want to put my face through a wall right now. I'm in so much pain, but I'm just like flat faced. Yeah, I'm in extreme excruciating pain. Like, this is me in extreme pain. Like, but the doctor thinks I'm just saying I'm in pain. But the dentist could tell by looking at what was happening in my mouth that there was no way on earth I should be in pain. They were kind of surprised I was conscious. But I have this ridiculously high pain tolerance, and unless I'm dying, I'm probably not going to go to the doctor or the dentist. It's like, the dentist is like, you would have been in a lot of trouble if you waited any longer for this abscessed tooth. But I'm that afraid of medical things that I'm like waiting until it's dire to even go. So that's what I need is to get over this medical phobia. But I think it's justified because doctors are terrible humans a lot of times.
Yeah, very relatable. What other kind of ways, oh, Brandy, you're gonna go?
Oh yeah. Speaking of doctors, I see a lot of those because of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and that was something that so much more knowledge is needed. I have a therapist. I have a physical therapist, and for instance, my therapist, I had to bring autism to her. I had to teach her about autism, and she's been very receptive to learning. But when we talked about maybe going to speak to someone who knew a little bit more about autism, we couldn't find one. So much is needed when you're an autistic adult. And then also with EDS, I go to different doctors and some of them can't even pronounce it. And for me to get diagnosed with this, I was 37 after years of thinking I was lazy, I was a baby, I had a low pain tolerance, I was just not as good as everyone else. I was none of those things. I was actually struggling because I was in pain all of the time. And nobody believed me. Nobody would listen to me. And I was just dismissed as having anxiety or hysteria or PMS. And it was just ridiculous how misinformed a lot of the medical community is. So a lot more support is needed in that area as well. But yeah, oh, and speaking of, I guess, positive support, it was really cool to go through my whole diagnosis process with Matt, because we did that together. And I know that's sometimes unique. It's like, first I was diagnosed with EDS, and then Matt was like, I can dislocate my joints too, though. It's like, and so he shows the doctor, and the doctor's like, congrats, you have it too. Let's see you next time. And then he was diagnosed, and then it was like, then came autism, and it was like, wait a second, Matt also does a lot of these things. And then we just went through it all together. So that was a really cool support system. And it's actually where his name came from, Spectrum-y Matt. I don't know, Matt, if you want to tell that part.
It was a nice little dig towards my therapist. I had to convince him of, hey, look, I have this extreme fear of cotton balls. Like, you pull them apart and I'm losing my crap. Like, I cannot handle life. And finally, after like describing that and the details of it, he goes, yeah, that's a little spectrum-y. And I was like, all right, that's that. I'm gonna just dig at my therapist the rest of my life, and spectrum-y Matt it is. So,
Former therapist, actually.
yeah, it went through a few after that. Fun times.
I would say like the best support I've ever had in my life was when I lived in Thailand. I didn't know I had ADHD or autism at that time, but we had a nanny for our kid who made my lunches for me to go to work, and like prepped all of the food and stuff like that, and did all the cleaning. And I was just like, this is amazing. I need this in my life all the time. And now I live in the UK, and I can't even really get a cleaner like that can clean to the specifics that I would really like. But for support, I'm a therapist, coach. I keep my friendship circle very, 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 very small, because there's only so much socializing that I can actually take, because it takes a lot of energy. And my partner, we've been married for like 7 or 8 years, and he's been awesome actually too, through like all of this. He doesn't have any diagnoses right now, but he's been really supportive of all of mine, and actually very affirming too, because when I told him about thinking that I might be autistic, he was the first person to be like, oh my gosh, yes, that's definitely you. I can totally see that. He had done a lot of research on his own, even before I actually even knew. And it's just so affirming for anyone that like self-diagnosis, you're always like, oh God, but not really, am I? No, sort of thing. So that's really good.